So what I'd like to talk about just quickly, before I hand you over to our chairman, Mr. Nick Griffin, is the Charlene Downs demo. This period of time is the 10th anniversary for Charlene, when she went missing. This is Charlene here. I'm sure you folks in the Northwest know a lot about it, and I'm sure you've read quite a bit about it. Charlene, if you remember, went missing 10 years ago. She's never been seen since. The people who were responsible for that, the shopkeepers of a certain takeaway in Blackpool, got let off with the incident. She went missing, and allegedly they were heard on camera boasting and bragging that they'd hacked her to bits, cut her up and put her in kebabs and sold her. Now that's somebody's daughter there, Charlene. It's somebody's daughter. Now this could happen to anybody in this country. Anybody, okay? And what we need to do is we need to be in Blackpool on the 2nd of November in support of the family of Charlene. Now I'm going to be there. There are others who are going to be there. Could you put your hands up if you're going to be there? Excellent. That's absolutely wonderful. Right, hands down. It's very important that we do attend. Very, very important. I have 2 kids. This could be one of my kids in the future, quite easily. Her parents don't know where she is. They haven't been able to put it to rest because she doesn't exist. They don't know where she is. And this, we have to show our support for this, and we have to be in Blackpool if we can on the 2nd. It's really, really important. We'll be going to Blackpool, we'll be doing a demonstration, we will be handing out leaflets to the people of Blackpool to tell them about what's happened in their town, because a lot of them don't even know about it. Some of them haven't got a clue what's going on because it's been hushed up by the media. So I would like to think that you can make yourself available on that day, 2nd of November. There will be more details about it coming on the website. There's already been things on there. Derek's doing a video about it. And let's get there and let's show our support for the parents and the family of this young girl who's gone missing 10 years ago. Now, I'm going to hand you over to our chairman, Mr. Nick Griffin, MEP, and he's going to say a few words to yourselves. Thank you very much.
Obviously, this is the campaign launch for the European elections. It's next May, but the work really starts now. There's no point leaving it until a few weeks before. The work really does start now. And I want to talk very briefly about the ultimate reason why it's worthwhile. I'll tell you why it's worthwhile. It's because being elected as a member of the European Parliament for the British National Party really makes a difference. Not just to me personally, it makes a huge political difference in all sorts of ways. Just occasionally, it actually makes a difference in terms of the legislation we end up with. As I'm sure you know, 85% of our laws come from the European Union. They don't actually come from the MEPs, they come from the Commission. We're basically a democratic fig leaf. But once in a while, there's something comes through in this tidal wave of legislation. There's an amendment comes through from, say, the crazy Greens, whose actual vision of Europe is a totally de-industrialised place where nobody has their own car. As a for instance, that's what they really want. And they come up with the most crazy proposals to make the legislation even worse. And once in a while, in the Parliament, in the main voting session, it's something like 364 votes for and 364 votes against. It's literally on a knife edge as to whether one of these things is even worse than it otherwise would be. And then having a British National Party MEP instead of a Green means that there's something isn't quite as bad as it otherwise would have been. But that really is as good as it gets. But it's actually better than nothing. Because this legislation, these people gaily pass, they happily pass these these rules. It never occurs to them the impact it has on real people. I saw in one thing once, I looked and I thought there was a reference to trillions of euros that they were going to spend. What? Actually, it was a typo. It was just an error. But it had gone through the whole committee stage. It had gone right through to plenary to the full voting Parliament stage without anyone noticing that there was an error by which they'd increased the amount of money they were spending by 1,000 times. No one had noticed. Now, they weren't actually going to spend that money, but the fact that through each of those stages no one had noticed should give you an understanding of just how careless these people are with our money, with your money and about how they're living in some kind of fantasy world. It's really dangerous. And occasionally a nationalist MEP, a proper MEP, makes a difference on a small scale. On another small scale, not long after I was elected, at a meeting in Blackpool, one of our chaps came up to us, and he was from Fleetwood, just up the road. Fleetwood has still got a fraction of a fishing fleet. It's a fraction of what we used to have, but it's still there. And he came up to me and he said, as a fisherman, well, we're looking to change the common fisheries policy, and actually they're trying to improve it a bit because the thing's been a total disaster. And he said they're going to be bringing forward a change in the legislation to protect what they call non-target species. The classic example is they're out there fishing and they're also catching dolphins. A non-target species, just throw them back dead or dying. So the legislation to protect non-target species. He said, OK, that's good, we can go along with that. But he said what they don't realise, because these people are hundreds of miles away from the sea, do you know that Luxembourg has a fishing fleet? It hasn't got 1 inch of coastline, but it's got a fishing fleet in Europe's common waters. Half of all Europe's waters are our waters, given away by the trade at Ted Heath. But he said that what they don't realise is that the discards, that's throwing fish back dead or dying because you're not allowed to land them because the EU rules, clumsily designed rules to try to protect fish stocks, won't allow you to land them. He said they also affect not just non-target species like dolphins, they also affect less valuable target species. Well, what do you mean? He said, well, we're out fishing and you catch a load of herring. You carry on fishing, you catch a load of cod. The herring's less valuable than the cod. You can't land overweight, so you throw the herring back dead into the sea. 1,000 million tonnes thrown back dead into the sea. Absolutely a crime against our environment, against our industry, against our people, against our national heritage. Time and time and time again. So he said that what actually needs doing is also this legislation needs improving to protect not just non-target species, but also less valuable target species. So when it came up in my committee, I was able to put forward this amendment and less valuable target species. Now, various British, and taking their lead from them, European socialists and liberals, voted against that amendment just because it came from me. But nevertheless, it went through by a whisker. So now in the legislation, that's there. So because I was there, a practical, hard-working British fisherman was able to come with me and do something to make his industry and thereby our heritage just that little bit better. So occasionally like that, things get better. But overall, to be honest, you could vote for several other MEPs and get the same result there for several other parties in that regard. But not on this one, not on the grooming issue. Before I was elected, when I was elected, the police, the political establishment had known for several decades that white girls in the northwest of England, and say in Birmingham, Sikh and Hindu girls as well as white girls, were being targeted for grooming by these gangs of Islamist thugs. They were being targeted for sex, for degradation, for drugs, for having themselves and their families destroyed. You all know it. And until I was elected, they'd simply ignored it. They felt they could ignore it. Now, recently, Andrew Norfolk of the Sunday Times has done a lot talking about grooming and so on. And they've actually set him up. He's really the person who's led this campaign to expose grooming and get something done. I'll tell you what, Andrew Norfolk sat in my 2 trials. Following on from what I said in 2004, he sat in my trials and he took notes and he reported on them. He didn't report what was going on then. He went away and he's made it his campaign. And Jack Straw has made it his campaign. And some police have done things. They still would have done nothing were it not for the fact that they had seen that the growing grassroots anger over that terrible crime against so many innocent young girls and their families, the growing anger over that was propelling our support. Our vote had made me a member of the European Parliament, and unless they did at least something to deal with the worst excesses, then it would carry on building and building until it reached a critical mass when all of a sudden we got enormous support. And it was the terror, the fear of that, the fact they hadn't been able to stop us with everything they threw to keep us out. The fact they hadn't been able to stop us was what made them realise, well, now we're going to have to do something. So they did something. And as a result, although there's still huge numbers of these gangs walking the streets, running the minicabs firms, running their takeaways and using them to groom girls and push drugs from, although there's still far too many of them, there's not So many of them. Just today in the news, there's the fact that the appeal by the 9 Rochdale groomers from Rochdale and Oldham, they appealed their conviction for between 4 and 19 years for rape and conspiracy to have sex with children. They've appealed it and it's been turned down. Those vile, vile creatures are in prison because I'm in the European Parliament. And thank you for putting me there. And it's made a difference all over, but the battle hasn't gone away. It continues. What we now have to do is to build and work on this campaign partly, and the fact that we've got an enormous amount of free post, and the fact that, partly through being in the European Union, I've got, and Clive as campaign manager has got, we've got a big war chest already in terms of money and capability to throw at alerting people of these issues. So now we've got to alert them, not to the fact they should vote British National Party again to keep things going, but while we're at it, so that they need to be aware that the groomers now, they've tended to move out of the really poor working class areas, which is one reason the police and the political elite didn't give a damn, because it was only poor white trash. It wasn't nice, respectable middle class girls like they have and so on. So we were the ones who were there then. It's now starting to move out because I'm told time and time again, the groomers have now understood that working class girls are getting wise to this and they're harder targets. So now instead of using, say, just the takeaway in a grotty part of town and giving them a packet of free chips or a free pizza, no, they now hang around outside mobile phone shops. Because the girls going to mobile phone shops with hundreds of pounds to spend on a mobile phone or whatever, these are girls from nice, respectable families. Girls brought up in nice, respectable schools where they teach them that, having any kind of suspicion about any kind of immigrant, well, that makes you a racist, and that's the worst thing you can possibly be. And these girls are now absolutely defenceless in a way that the poor working class girls were a few years ago. So we've got to get it across to them and their parents as well, that there is a risk and that the most important thing they can do is to be aware of it themselves, to protect themselves and their mates as well. And it doesn't matter the fact that the rotten, corrupt, lamestream media in the northwest of England won't tell girls that. If through our campaign we get that across and we save those girls, not the whole of them at one go, but one and three, and they tell their mates, and we can get that across, and we are going to use this campaign and the money that being there has given us to throw at this campaign, we're going to use it to wake more of our young girls up so that they are safe in the future. As Adam said, the 1st and 2nd of November, please be there for Charlene Downs. I've sat, again, because I've been an MEP, I've sat with a number of families and people close to the victims of various grooming cases, racist murder cases, when, because it's our people are the victims, nobody's interested. I've sat with a number of these families and they've all had their hearts broken. And it's something really hard to do, to be with them under those circumstances. And they wanted something done, but in the end, time after time, when it's come to a second or a third phone call meeting or whatever, they backed out because the police have leant all over them, really brutally. Oh, if you run with a BNP, there's no chance of any justice. You know, when we catch the accused, well, they'll get off by saying, you're in the BNP, your son was in the BNP or whatever. They lean all over them to shut them up, to silence them. And then when they've shut them up and silenced them, they then wait for justice. They wait for arrests. They wait for something to happen. And nothing bloody well does happen, time and time and time again. And the only family that I sat with, Charlene Downs' family, are the only ones, particularly Karen Downs, the only ones who've had the courage to stand up to all that police pressure, all the intimidation is what it is, and say, yeah, you know what? The only people who care are the British National Party. The only people who'll change things are the British National Party. And it's not just for us and our daughter and our son. It's all out for all the others who will become victims unless something is done. We're going to stand up and campaign with the British National Party for justice for Charlene and protection for other girls like her. Please be there on the 1st, 2nd of November. On election night, as Clive said, it was an incredible, tense experience. On election night, I made a pledge that once I was in there, I would work and have researchers in, and we'd really find out what was at the back of this monstrous attack on our sovereignty, on our national identity, on our freedoms and so on, and whatever we found we would expose. Now, I haven't yet fulfilled that pledge, not least because basically straight after we won, you may remember, we won in June, and by July we had 70 taxpayer-funded lawyers of the Commission for Racial Equality crashing down, trying to destroy this party, and you know, wave after wave of attacks from the media, from the state, from the police, from so-called nationalists. All sorts of attacks designed literally to destroy us, to bankrupt me, to send me to prison, to break our hopes and our hearts forever. That was the attempt. And for the best part of 3 years, I really was able to do very little except working to survive that, working to pull this party through it. And as you know, we've done it now. We're the only game in town. And now finally, quite near the end of the term, I'm getting time to allocate my time and my staff time to going back to fulfilling that pledge. And we're really quite a long way along that road, and we'll be publishing things pretty soon. And just because I've only got a couple of minutes, I've spoken at a couple of meetings, I think we've now got it on the website, about a man called Richard Coudenhove-Kalergi, who was one of the fathers of the European Union idea. He was the one who all the people in the 40s and 50s who decided, yes, all the politicians in France, in Britain, in Germany, who decided, yes, we're going to build this European superstate. The ideas all came from this man who was half Japanese and half Austrian, who at the end of the First World War started pushing for a European superstate. He was funded by the same Warburg Bank that also funded the Bolshevik takeover of Russia, the Bolshevik slaughter of millions of white Christian people in Russia. It's that sinister. Now, people like UKIP, they understand a bit of this. They don't know about Coudenhove-Kalergi and his influence on others. But I think, to be fair, they do understand, millions of people actually understand, that what the European Union is doing and has done to countries like Britain, to nations like Britain, was quite deliberate to destroy the nation state, to destroy its economic sovereignty, to destroy its political institutions, one by one, to chip away things. Our parliament, our jury system, our control over our own borders, one by one, to chip away all the trappings and institutions of the nation state. Because you can't build a United States of Europe when the individual nation states are still alive and people are loyal to them. So Coudenhove-Kalergi, for instance, came up with the idea of having Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, a piece of it, as the European Union's anthem. That was from him. But everything from the anthem, from the trappings, right through to the actual, we'll destroy piecemeal, little by little. We'll destroy all the institutions of the nation state. So in the end, there's nothing between the people and the European colossus, nothing at all. And then we have one governmental system. Even UKIP people get that. Millions of people out there get that. That's understood. You can either have the British nation, French nation, German nation, Belgian nation, whatever. You can either have the nations, or you can have a European Union superstate. Take your choice. And David Cameron claims to be giving us a referendum. How many years late? But we know he will only, the reason for the delay, he doesn't want a referendum until he knows that it's definitely going to be won for the people who want to stay in the European Union. And so the choice is, everyone understands, the choice is between the European Union or national freedom. Everyone gets that. But what's never been understood, never been pointed out before, and we're going to, because I'm going to fulfil this pledge, is that Coudenhove-Kalergi and people like him had right from the beginning a second strand of what they wanted, a second theme, a second great aim. And they understood this, that they could destroy the British nation state. They could destroy it. They could take away all our institutions. They could change our currency, our miles, our pints, get rid of our parliament, get rid of our counties, get rid of every aspect of being British. But while we were still here, the British people, any time the British people decided to, they could say, you know what? We've had enough of this. We are going to rebuild it. We're going to take back our independence. The fact they've destroyed our coal industry doesn't matter. The coal's still under the ground. 100 years hence, the British could say, we want our coal industry back again. We might have to go to the USA to get people who could show us how to do it, but we could rebuild the coal industry. They knew that, and so parallel with destroying the nation state, they also, right from the beginning in the early 1920s, were writing, we are also going to use mass immigration and integration, forcible mass propaganda campaigns to make people integrate, to make them mix up the races and the peoples. We're going to just use that to destroy the very peoples who make up the nation states of Britain. They came up with a plan in 1922, literally for the genocide of our kind. That's what they were doing. And they're still doing it right now. And that is going to come out in the documents and the research, because we now know where the archives are. We're going to have people going into the archives. And in the last few months of my term, while running this campaign to get re-elected, we're also going to be doing this so that I fulfil that pledge to really show just how wicked and how evil this thing is. And that really makes the point that there's no point voting for a Tory because perhaps they're not quite as bad as the Labour Party. There's no point voting for UKIP because these people, they've been there 20 years and they still only tell us one half of the story. And unless you know the whole story, you can't begin to defend our nation and our people and our children and our grandchildren's future from the utter evil that these people would do to us. So that's why it's also very important that I got elected and that together we get re-elected so we can carry on with that work. It really does matter. There's practical benefits. If you talk to people about that on the doorstep, they'd think you were barking mad. I know I'm talking to people here who understand, who are deeply political. But on the doorstep, we need to talk about practical things. So again, within a couple of weeks, because we've been working on it for quite some time, we'll be putting out and making available to you to have on street stalls for people in your own areas the best booklet on advice on debt and how to get out of debt that anyone's ever put together. It's really, really good. It's an excellent piece of work. We'll have leaflets about it as well. It'll be there on the internet. We'll have a huge campaign to make it go viral. And debt and struggling with money is something which is breaking thousands upon thousands upon thousands of ordinary decent families in this constituency, in your town, right now. There really is a catastrophe for ordinary people, whether it's a combination of things. It's the bedroom tax. It's unemployment. It's that awful zero hours contracts in 101 different ways. Ordinary people are absolutely being screwed. And the Tories talk about there's an economic revival. Not in Manchester, there's not. Not for ordinary people. Not in Blackburn, not in Burnley, not anywhere in the northwest of England. There may be a bit of a recovery for the profits of the banks. There's no recovery there for ordinary people. It's just being ground down more and more and more and more. And there we are, practically, within a few weeks, we'll have this really good campaign to take into the tail end of this year and the next, so that when people say, well, why should I vote BNP? You're talking to them, you can hold it up and say, well, how about this? Because this is doing something really decent and useful for ordinary people. So it makes a difference, but it's only really possible because you people got me elected an MEP last time. It only remains possible if we throw everything at it, and as Clive said, work that small minority of the people who are the minority who are going to vote and make the difference, because we can. We certainly can do. Finally, because we're pushed for time, I'll just mention the other thing. Had I not been an MEP, I would not in June have been invited as a European-level politician to Syria. So I wouldn't have been able to go. When I was in Syria in June, one of the key things I was able to do, because I was talking to British journalists, and just for once there was a crack in the dam of lies and deceit and just plain blanking of refusing to talk to us. Because the media was so astounded I was in Syria that when I said, look, actually, life in Damascus is really quite normal. You can hear gunfire a long way away, shellfire, but everyone here is basically happy. There's plenty of food in the shops. Prices are low because they still subsidise them. Do you know, they even subsidise the bread prices for people in rebel areas. Where they're actually fighting, yeah, they're under siege, it's a different matter. But areas held by the rebels, the bread is subsidised. Even the electricity is still subsidised by the central Syrian government because they want to keep their country together. It's really something quite remarkable. But that kind of thing wasn't known. When I was in Damascus, I was able to point out, I was talking to various journalists saying, look, actually, it's really quite normal here. And on the day before I was due to come back, the BBC, which for several years, had run the story, it's all chaos, it's all shambles, you know, there's fighting in the streets, everyone hates the government, they're just terrified to move and all the rest of it, it's a place under siege, blah, 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 blah. The day before I was due to come back, with a video camera full of footage showing this was lies, they ran a story on the BBC saying, do you know what, actually Damascus is really rather normal, and most people there support the president. I was able to force them to do that, because although their reach in media terms is far, far bigger than what we have on the internet, And if someone like Russia Today pick up a clip of it, as they did the other week, and run a clip showing it, then the BBC's monopoly on forming public opinion is destroyed. And they don't know amongst how many people. Some people are seeing it's a lie and it spreads. So we forced them to change. That was quite significant. Didn't help people in Britain in any way, shape or form, to be honest, other than giving them the truth. But that's better than nothing. But because that happened in June, and because the Syrians were so astounded by how the BBC had been forced to turn 180 degrees round, when it came out that Cameron and various other war criminals in Westminster, or would-be war criminals, were within hours, literally, of launching 200 British cruise missiles at a cost of £1 million each, plus the support, that's probably £250 million. That's more than half of what they will screw out of the poor people of Britain with the bedroom tax in a year. And they were prepared to blow that in 12 hours, killing people in a country a long, long way away, which has nothing to do with us. And when that came out, so I got on the phone to the contacts I've made over there and said, look, I want to come and to help on the publicity drive and answering what they're saying and so on. Are you interested? They said yes. So I went over there. So when Cameron was perhaps hours away from launching this attack, because you people, the people of the Northwest, had made me an MEP, I was able to go over there and, as I'm sure you know, write the letter which the Syrian government sent to the British government, which tipped a number of MPs from voting for war into voting to stay at something approaching peace, at least to keep Britain out of it. Now, had we been dragged into that, as I say, it would have been something like £250 million within the first 12 hours. The Syrians would have retaliated, obviously, and we would have been sucked into a war, and lots of other people would have got involved in the war as well. Israel would have got involved in the war, used it as an excuse to attack Iran. Iran would have fired back. All the countries of the Middle East would have been dragged into that. America, of course, would have used the fact the British had gone in as an excuse to go in. Russia would have gone in as well. You could have had a world war as a consequence of that. And at the very least, you can bet your life that the chaos would have been such that instead of now, as it is being done, Syria's defensive chemical weapons being destroyed under United Nations supervision, instead of that, Britain and France and the United States or other governments would have so destabilised the situation in Syria that you would have had those chemical weapons falling into the hands of crazed Islamist extremists, the throat cutters, the liver eaters, the people who want, as we've seen on the news for the last couple of days, who are urging their own people, all these various non-Brits living in Britain, to declare war against us, to murder people in this country, including me. Don't bother with bombs, just use box cutters, just use knives. But they'd also, those same people, would be now in control of Syria's weapons. Huge numbers of chemical weapons will be in the hands of those people. And as a result, Cameron and all the rest right now will be saying, now we've got to send British troops into Syria to seize those weapons. And if anyone asks you, what's the British National Party done for the people of the northwest of England? You can say to every pub where they've raised money for Help for Heroes, for every family who've got a son or a nephew or a grandson or daughter for that matter, in the army, you say, you know what? They're not going to Syria. They're not going to be murdered in Syria by cutthroat, crazed Islamist extremists, because the British National Party's MEP was able to go over there and help keep Britain out of war, which is a bloody good reason for voting British National Party again.
Listen, this man has been on the nationalist scene and in politics since he was a boy, a small boy, right? He's stayed with us, he's stuck with us through thick and thin. Where's Tommy Robinson? He sold out those people. A fly-by-night plant, Mr. Robinson, giving people false hope. This man gives everybody real hope. And I would like to raise my hat to him because I think he's absolutely fantastic. And if it wasn't for him, we wouldn't be doing half as good as we are today. Mr. Griffin, thank you.